Good evening, folks, and welcome to Definitely Discussion. This is episode 456, and tonight we have Guru Federico, who will be talking about Bahad Zubu under GM Yuli. So if you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. Smash that like button. If you've got questions, put them on the right-hand side in the comment section, and I will be sure to get to them. Without further ado, I'm going to be bringing up Guru right now. Hey, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
Yeah, no complaints. Just the ever going some sagas, but
Hey, life wouldn't be fun if there wasn't some adventure in it, right?
I'm telling you, yeah. I guess boredom is overrated, right?
Oh gosh, yes.
So interesting test run. So before we jump into the nitty gritty, the exciting stuff, what was your martial arts background before going into FMA?
Oh geez. Well, typical Filipino dad who loved. Well, my dad was from the karate judo days in the Philippines, so as soon as I was a kid, maybe about 8, he was like, "Oh, you gotta do the closest thing I can find," which was Taekwondo at the time. He tried to teach me a little bit of boxing, but Taekwondo was most of it up until the teenage years, and then I discovered girls, and it went sideways from there. Uh, but after that, I got back into FMA during college. Um, just because, well, I found Mark Wiley's book, Filipino Martial Culture, for the first time. And, it was just like, hey, we have this thing. And, just trying to learn your own roots. And, my dad died around that time as well. So it was a way to try to connect to him a little bit because, before he died, I showed him the book and he's like, oh, that's something my grandpa used to do. And, it wasn't much to it. And ever since then, it's just been FMA in one flavor or another until I met GM Yuli late 2008. And it has been just BZ, aside from some silly stints in boxing. So,
yeah.
So the occasional seminar for stuff that that's outside, but it's hard to say like, hey, I took a 4-hour seminar in this to say you have much in as far as knowledge of it. But like the arts that
right.
actually grinded in has been just FMA and boxing for the last 20 some years. So.
Wow, you can't go wrong with that combo. So when you were Taekwondo, so you're in Taekwondo, and then in college you get to experience FMA. I mean, that must have been like for myself. I was Taekwondo, saw the first UFC, went down there looking for MMA, but really found my ultimate love, which was FMA. And so what? How was that? I mean, I know as a teenager you left Taekwondo, but there's still you had to remember some of what you did, and now in your experience in FMA in college. I mean, there had to this huge contrast of what you used to do versus what you're being exposed to now.
Well, like the biggest jump has been with GM Yuli. But the first FMAs I ever did were fairly standard West Coast styles. So a mix of Serrata, Largo, and Cantina de Mano. And it was different, but not as different as what GM Yuli does. And so, it was definitely, it took some adjusting to, but, it was very similar. It didn't help that a lot of the my former teacher, they had a karate background, so they kind of karatified the teaching of how they taught FMA. But, it was one of those things, about 6.5 years of that, 7 years. And, I felt I had a solid base when of FMA when I met GM, and I might as well have not done anything when I met him. It was like, oh yeah, just spent 7 years sitting in my basement doing nothing.
Yeah, as opposed to what you did do. So in college, was this kind of like a college a class that was being offered, or was it kind of like somebody that came in to teach and formed a club?
No, it's just in my, I'm not originally from the Twin Cities area. I'm from southern Minnesota. And so, just one of those things, you're a college student and you need to fill some time and you're trying to, do it a little healthier than go to the bars and whatnot. And, I found a martial arts group. Like everybody in Minneapolis, everyone's, if you're looking for FMA, you find them in Cali first. Just schedule wise, it didn't work out for me. Just because their only Cali class was on Saturday at the time. I tried to do some of the phase classes, but I had a small child, so it's like I was seeing him on the weekends, and so kid, Kali, the kid came first. But serendipitously, after my dad died, uh, like I said, a West Coast Eskrima guy. I don't want to name the system just because people get weird sometimes if you leave systems, but he just moved to the cities and started teaching, and I was just like, hey, the schedule works out, and I while learning all the other arts would be fun. I'm doing this. At the time I was doing this just as I thought I would be like, hey, this will get me through college, and then once I'm done with college, real life will take over. And unfortunately, I remember GM Yuli telling me a similar story of when he was younger. Is this the bug hits you and it hits you and you get stuck with it 20 some years later. But yeah, no, I was driving probably half an hour twice a week to train with this guy, and then I just kept sticking to it all the way through law school, and then that's when I met GM Yuli, and it's just everything was so different. It didn't work to kind of mix. It was just like have to start from the beginning and and relearn.
Yeah. So the guy that you were so was it you're saying was some Kabbalist type
Yeah,
of karate flair, so to speak?
yeah. Well, so they were trying to teach pure what they. So the art wasn't mixed in a certain sense. They were teaching whatever the West Coast blend they had of Serrata, Largamano, Cadena de Mano, and then some ancillary arts like the Cuerdas. Uh, they didn't mix the art, but the culture of the class and the pedagogy of teaching was very much in a karate a karate field. Which if you're here in the U.S., for most folks, FMA is a second art or a third art or a fourth art. So
You're just sculpture, yeah.
yeah. So it's not surprising when people especially unless you're in California or Hawaii, how many people hang out with a lot of Filipinos. And so there's that cultural difference that especially when you go home and you start meeting folks and seeing how their classes run, that is night and day different versus that kind of more East Asian martial art kind of pedagogy and tenor.
Interesting. So it sounds all right. So the Cuerdas, Cabales, sounds like similar to multi-Stockton in there. But so when so you get done. So how I guess before we go into Bahad Zubu, well, first of all, I mean, how did you meet Yuli? How did that occur?
It was we did not plan on meeting Yuli. So yeah, I was just I'm Phil Lam. I like going back to the Philippines. Me and Mark at the time, we were both in that. We met doing FMA, and and for better or for worse, I had gotten to a point where I was helping teach classes. And one of the things I like doing because of my friends in California kept telling me, if you're not sparring, are you really doing FMA? We would spar regularly. And it was one of those ones of trying to make our training work versus what works. Like a lot of people in their evolution in FMA, you start looking at other videos and what other people are doing and trying to see like what will work, and whatnot. And unfortunately, our teacher at the time, it wasn't his interest, and so he wasn't too much into that. So like it was a lot of blind leading the blind. But we did know that like a lot of people, if you're trying to do more sparring, you find Dog Brothers video, and hey, imagine that the KI stuff seems to work the best when you're trying to spar awkwardly and not knowing what you're doing. But when I was just planning on going to the Philippines, and like a lot of folks who've never been, my buddy was like, "Hey, I've never been there. You have family. This will be easy. Since we both do FMA, let's try to find someone to just train a day with."
Yeah.
And that was our entire plan. We were going to train one day and then just zoom around the Philippines and do a good vacation. And so we started reaching out to people. My uncle was friends with Roland, GM Roland Dantes, so I reached out to them and a few other people back in the FMA forum days. And of all the people, GM Yuli was the first one to contact us back. And
of all the contacts you made, like he was
the first one to contact us back. And it was one of those things. I think we eventually did hear about back from half a dozen people, but he was the first one to contact us back by quite a bit because everyone else was slow. And again, having read Filipino martial culture and all that, we knew he was a pillar of KIs, and we're like, hey, this seems to be the stuff that works the most in sparring. Why don't we just meet him, brush up on it a little bit, and then we'll have our fun vacation. And after that first day, it was a blessing and it was a ruin of the vacation because we never left in Southern Philippines.
You guys didn't like go see anything else after being exposed to GM.
How available are you, GM? And for better for worse, he was available for all of the stay, and so we just.
I just happened to have this whole next 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. But after that, the bug hit, and ever since then, I've been trying to go back every couple of years just to see him, and it's an experience to train with GM Yuli, and it's just one of those things. Even if GM told me like you don't need to train anymore, just to visit the man and hang out with him in person and to feel, and that like so many of the things that he would say 15 years ago that didn't make any sense now make sense, and it's like, I need to pick your brain as to I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. Can you explain this or that or the other thing?
So this vacation that you went, so circa 2008?
Yep, it was the end of 2008. So our training period is really weird because I was going home for Christmas, and so and that's when we met. Was the end of 2008. And then we've just been going back. Well, and I've been going back, ever since. And the pandemic put a little bit of a hiccup in there, so it's a longer gap than I would have liked. But it's one of those things, and it helps that it's warm in wintertime there, so it's not
You're Minnesota, man. I mean, you're in the brunt.
No, there was definitely one of those years I went there, and it was. I went from 90-degree weather back home to negative 20-degree weather, and it was just like, why didn't I just stay more?
That's a body shock. Oh,
yeah.
You get off the plane and you're just like, yeah, that's tough. Wow. So when you before we go into what Bahad Zubu is, so when you what resonated with you to know that you wanted to continue with this guy? Like, I can't believe. Well, first of all, let me back up a bit. Who were the other folks? So 2008, like, who were the other folks that you reached out to?
Oh God! Like I said, I did reach out to GM Roland. I'm forgetting.
You saw him.
Yeah, no, because my uncles was friends with him, and and that did cause a little familial, like, why are you training with this guy and not my friend?
Because your friend didn't contact me back.
Well, he contacted me back, but he was late because he was in Australia, and he was traveling, and so and again, and then I'm forgetting who the other guy was, because there was at least 2 or 3 more guys. I do believe one was an LSI guy, and then another guy. I'm forgetting. It was so long ago.
Yeah, but it's just interesting. Kind of modern Arnis.
Yeah. He wasn't a modern Arnis guy. He was from Negros, and he had his own style.
Would have been modern Arnis, right?
I'm sorry. Yeah, Roland
Roland.
was definitely a modern Ernest.
Yeah.
Really nice guy. But yeah, no, it's just the timing and fate. And
There's
I'm sure everyone
nothing.
who contacted us back were good, but we went with
Yeah,
him. So
but he was, yeah, with the filming. But I've heard nothing but phenomenal stuff about him, and I mean, yeah. So then, okay, so you meet Yuli, kind of charismatic. I mean, he's joking around while he's hitting you, I'm guessing, and
oh gosh, yeah.
you know,
No,
uh,
it's one of those ones. I swear the man has eyes in the back of his head. Well, we were awkwardly trying to do a drill, and he was taking a cigarette break and checking his phone. We are like, okay, he's not watching. Take a little break, and like the minute we stopped, he was like, "What are you guys doing?" That ability to monitor. But I'll be honest, and I think I mentioned Palasan last time on our brief visit. You know, after a few days of training with him, oh my gosh, this man's amazing. He can do he can do a million and one things. And then, like everything else, anyone who trains with him for the first time, and it's really, really hard. You get left scratching your head. It's like, well, maybe it's not for me, and maybe I can't do this. Maybe
hmm.
he can do all this stuff, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's no hope. And then you go to Palasan, and like I said, literally anyone on the street who's near his the headquarters, he's probably trained at one point to a very high level, and you can see, and that's how it worked for me. It's like, hey, this is definitely a recreatable kind of thing, depending on how much work we want to put into it and all that stuff. And so the fact that he could produce so many quality students.
Look at the old champ, the back in the '90s, his whole sparring team.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, just ever since, like that one interview he had with both him and among Romy when they were talking about just even the early days of KI.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of those things. And for better or for worse, at the time, we were very fight oriented. We wanted to have the chip on the shoulder, wanted to fight, wanted to compete, and all that stuff. And so, once it's the biggest thing, and I think it was the same moment for both me and Mark was uh, the minute John Chan hit the tire and the building shook. That was like, oh my goodness, that is some magic there.
Wow.
It's one of those things where GM Yuli is going to do really well, but once you start seeing his students and the monsters they are when it comes to sparring and closing distance and just power, that is something I have a good friend who does LSI, and he's like, we often compare notes on biomechanics, and it's one of those ones where, the emphasis GM has for his competitors on power and endurance and speed, it's almost more similar to LSI than a lot of other FMA styles. If I was to pick something that's the closest to it, just in the sense that there's that emphasis on power.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, one of their early statements about like, how can you join do you know you're ready to join the fight team or not? And it was whether or not you could break a stick on their tire. And one of the things you'll find out with if you ever get to Palasan and get to hit that tire, it's soft. They took a semi-truck tire, inverted it, cut out all the tread, and so it doesn't like a regular tire. There's a lot more give to it, and so it's a lot more of a human being. But that also means if you're tearing up a stick on that thing, you are hitting it a lot and you're hitting it hard.
Right, to break the stick because there's some give in there, so you're not just snapping on a hard surface. I mean,
it's just pure dedication and willpower, and it resonated. Well, years later, so much of this stuff resonated because, like, I hadn't, at the time, I hadn't competed in boxing. I was just like, boxing for fitness and blah blah blah. But so much of what Yuli emphasized in how he would train, his advice for competition. When I compare it to some of my boxing coaches, it's like take out boxing, put in FMA, and it's almost very similar. Kind of like the idea of one of the ideas behind power is like, hey, and it's a very Filipino mindset. It's not a guaranteed way to win every match because it has its holes. But if you're going to wear armor, my goal is to hit you through the armor so that you feel it like you did have armor.
Right.
And that's the same attitude my boxing coaches had. Is like, hey, if you have headgear, just hit them harder,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Wow.
But it's definitely like I said, the fact that it's recreatable and he's made so many good students. And I wish I could claim I have any physical talent or a knack for FMA. I'm just as awkward as anybody else. But any mild success I've had competing or whatever is purely just from the strength of his art and the idea of treating it like treating fights and preparing for a fight like any other fighting art would do it. Have a good lead up towards training. If you don't know when the tournament is, try to stay fit in the in between times. If you know when the tournament is, try to have that ramp up towards it.
Yeah.
That and a lot of sparring.
No, I mean, historically speaking, I mean, his reputation and his team speaks for itself. I mean, there's been a few episodes here where that's been kind of covered deeply, and just how well they did, back in the day before he kind of, I guess, pulled out or whatever happened there. I don't exactly recall, but nothing but just accolades as far as how they did. So, and we got a bunch of folks. We got Eric, we got Maynard, we got Rich, Coach Danny. We got that guy Steve from Canada. That guy is no. And we got Christophe Rambis. Hey, who's also, I believe, from Canada. All right, and we got Ron Saturno, GM Ron Saturno. All right, all right. But so for folks who might not know, like, kind of, I mean, so obviously you meet them, you're hooked. Obviously you're not visiting any other places. You're not going to the beaches. You're just dialed into Yuli. Like what could you just like if somebody just came out and asked you like, how would you describe Bahad Zubu like to somebody?
Oh, geez. Well, the textbook answer would be Bahad Zubu is the combination of Talisiliustrismo and Palakbanate of Jogo. Mechanics from Palakbanate and a little bit of this strategy there, but the long range and Inganyo of Talisiliustrismo. And smashed into there is everything else GM is trained in for a little bit or whatnot. But that doesn't really say much if you have never experienced any of the other arts. One of the things that really impresses me about GM Yuli, which is one of the reasons why, if you have the chance, please visit him in person. The power generation that man has. There's times where if you can hear anything from the live hand, that is a painful check from GM Yuli. And it won't look like it on video. It'll look like, oh, he just did a normal check, and why are these guys wincing? Are they extra pain sensitive or not? But like, he can generate power from very short ranges and very explosively and dynamically. And a lot of that is that emphasis on body coordination that comes from the Palakabanate or the stuff he's learned from Jogo. But the long-range fighting strategy, particularly Inganyo, and the emphasis on Inganyo or baiting.
With Ganyo, the in-between, he always says, the in-between.
Well, it's one of those ones. If you've gone through the basic angles, our basics start with Inganyo. There's no direct strike. It's always an Inganyo, then the strike. Or there's the Inganyo and then the follow-up. And, one of the things that, I remember chatting with Iggy, and it was like, us mere mortals, we can hope for one, maybe two, to think 1 or 2 steps ahead. And like, okay, maybe this first shot was Inganyo, or maybe this one, and then I got you on a second Inganyo. But GM can usually think about 3 steps ahead of us, kind of thing for that. And that emphasis on sneakiness and countering that counter, like I said, I have, outside of the boxing world, I've not encountered that. That emphasis on, not being direct, setting things up, and making sure that, hey, if I'm going to take a risk, I'm going to get 100% reward from it.
Yeah.
That if I was going to say describe Giamulli's art, aside from the textbook answer, I would say it's Inganyo, it's baiting. And it's that kind of sneakiness of like, hey, whatever you think I'm doing, I hope you're thinking you know what I'm doing, but it's not going to be. He's going to surprise you in a way that you've never seen before, kind of thing.
Yeah, just I gotta get back when things starting to slow down now. When I gotta get back on meeting him, I've seen him on online classes, but much to your point, heavy on the Ngannou, the in between. And what's unique about him, just the way he moves for his age now is freaking uncanny. It's just absolutely amazing. And just in the movement with the Ngannou and just where he ends up completely flanked. It's a thing of beauty. He's a treasure in so many regards. And obviously far better than I do, but I'm only giving a testing to what I'm seeing from the other side of a Zoom class. You know what I mean? In person, I can only imagine.
Now, one of the things I really appreciate about GM, though it's one of those things. It's usually easier when someone else is asking it, and you're the bystander. He doesn't have a problem with what if, and it's one of those things where early on in my FMA training, a lot of those teachers would like, oh, you can't do what if, you just gotta take it on faith, Whereas GM is perfectly happy to answer your what if I did this or what if I did that, but it's not going to be it won't be a theoretical verbal answer. He'll be like, well, try it. And then you will get your very good answer, but depending on how hard you fed and how stubborn you're being, you might regret the asking the question. But that willingness to try and to prove and to do is just, well, geez, he's how old and he's still willing. I bet you to this day, take any young cat and he's still willing to teach him something interesting or two. Let's put it that way.
No, it's just, he's what, mid-70s now? How old is he?
So 1949, and so he just had his birth. So his birthday was in April, so he's 74 and turning 75 this April.
And moving the way he does.
Oh my gosh, yeah. He's lived a life too, so it's not one of those. He had a cushy life and didn't put his body to work. He's definitely
no. Yeah, there's definitely. So what? As far as the weaponization that's covered, obviously he's got the walking stick. So is a full gamut: edge weapons, walking stick. The full thing.
Well, so. So I'm going to give a lawyerly answer here.
Sure, we'll take it.
In the sense of, one of the things that really stuck with us, and the fortune I've had here in the Midwest is that we've had 3 of us who've trained with them in person and taught regularly and trained with each other. And so it's been nice to be able to compare notes and to compare video and as well as compare experience, even if you were there. Some days there's that little bit of awe when you're in Giamulli's presence. But the thing that always stuck to me is what is a weapon? It's an extension. The real weapon is you. So it really doesn't matter whether it's a walking stick, a knife, or whatever. At the end of the day, there is that universality between the different tools, and the different tools are more for your personal training versus, hey, this is how we fight with XYZ. But that being said, the less lawyerly answer is usually going to be length of weapon. So if you've gone over the quick stick, the super stick, the bio stick, double, and then how he manipulates edge weaponry in particular, which is something, once you experience this, of course, why wouldn't you turn the blade and get that edge in? Why do you have to make a set or whatever? but that's something that no matter how much he may or may not say, depending on his mood, he teaches edge weaponry. He really takes advantage of every aspect of an edge weapon in a way that I have never seen anyone else do. So like I said, so the loyalty answer, you're the weapon. The practical answer in training, super stick, bio stick, quick stick, double, and then everything can be interchanged, edge weapon or not. But again, some of his answers are going to depend on what moods he's in, what is he teaching you at the moment. But if you do have the pleasure of training Blade with him, it is definitely, it's unique, and it's one of those ones where, for all the talk of a lot of styles will talk, hey, we do edge weapon, we do edge weapon, we do edge weapon. Well, what edge weapon are you using? Then how are you taking advantage of every aspect of edge weapon? Like GM Yuli, if you take like let's see, I have I don't have a Punite available, but if you take a Basayan sword with a Rakaso, right, he will play with the Rakaso in ways that, like, I've never seen other people play with a Rakaso like that. With the Kampilan, he'll use the guard to help turn the blade in ways that I've never seen other people.
I've seen that in like one of his demos. That is absolutely amazing. It's how he manipulates that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, well, maybe it's for flair, maybe it's for whatever, but when you start sparring with it, the amount, like I tell some of my students, like one of the differences between GM Tony and GM Yuli, there's two answers to how do you, there's a lot of innate creativity in both of them in how they interpreted Tatang's art, but there's two answers of how do you take advantage of an edge and not create too much space for recovery. Because if I overswing, that's all that time for you to come in and do whatever.
Oh yeah,
so I'm going to minimize that. And
Thank
they both had the beauty of them. They both had different.
Doing this right now, recovery's longer.
Yeah, they had different answers to it, and they're both creative, and they both work depending on where you put your time and your practice in. And I just like Yuli's answer. Like, I would never think, oh gosh, forgotten the story. I would never think to, instead of swinging this down and letting it bring back up, to just turn the blade up in my hand. That kind of blade manipulation he does with his hand is like, it cuts so much time off.
Yeah.
That, again, when you're playing with live blade or trainers and you're sparring with it, it might feel weird at first, but once you start getting it into practice, it's like, wait a minute, this really does work. It's
one of those talking about cutting radius. I mean, if you're coming down like this and then you're turning up, I mean, look at the recovery and cutting radius.
Oh, exactly.
No, it's music to my ears. I mean, that's awesome. So, just for the viewers who might not know, including me, bio stick, quick stick, and what was the third?
Super stick. They're all based on lengths. So, like, he used to always say bio stick, which or quick stick. He'd analogize. It's like, so he made a bari, which is kind of like his version of an Indonesian smaller weapon. That's on the original logo. But he used to always say it's how you would measure a barong. And so you'd go belly button to third eye, so that would be your quick stick. Belly button to the head would be super. And so he would always say, this is so you don't have to lean if you want to catch someone's foot when you're training. And so, and you'll see that a lot in the Palaka Banati guys, so that's their length. The bio stick is more, you would say, belly button down. So from, and so that would be more, he kept trying to explain to us pestle, and we couldn't understand the translation at first. But, he likens it to a pestle for grinding rice. And, if you've ever seen some Manobo video on rice grinding and the way they do the music and the body mechanic, and that weave in, weave out that they have
Mm.
using it. That's kind of the inspiration he has for that. And he always says that way. Of all the things, BioStick is training you for empty-handed grappling. Of all things, the longest weapon. But again, and then double stick, he's like, hey, double stick is for when you don't have a partner. That way you can practice. But if you have a partner, you can switch off. And so for all of them, the way he's always approached it with us is that they're training tools depending on what you're trying to train. And they're usually a biomechanic thing, and they're not necessarily a direct. You're not limited in the sense of, hey, the BioStick form, I can only do the BioStick form when I have a weapon of this length. It's everything that you've trained, quick stick, knife, or whatever. You can still do. It's just the BioStick form you're doing is teaching you a special aspect that you can't do with a shorter stick.
Gotcha.
And a lot of that is balance. A lot of that's positioning and body coordination.
No, thank you, because I knew you were mentioning 3 sticks, and I'm like, so I assume length had something to do with them, or weight, or diameter, or something.
Length, and and they're all gonna be skinny. So.
Okay, on the skinnier end. Okay.
Yeah, and unfortunately, for better or for worse, and especially, Brian was like, "Oh man, if he's hitting you that hard, maybe he doesn't like you." But it is one of those things. It is nice to feel what you can generate with a small stick, and what the mechanic can be. And one of the reasons it's skinny, because there is no, for safety purposes, we're hitting stick on stick or whatever. It's always we're hitting you, we're hitting each other, we're hitting each other, we're hitting each other. And a lot of the times, if you see any drill or us playing, and if you hear anything that sounds like a stick clack, if it was a stick clack, that's a mistake. But 9 out of 10 times, it's us getting hit with a stick, and it's the sound of a stick on our bodies. Kind of thing.
Wow. So, with regards to knife, I mean, he's got the little small ones, and then he's got the mini barongs, and so is that kind of under the bra, or?
Yeah, well, I think most people would have seen the small knife, and so if people have been following GM Yuli for a long time, what you were probably seeing in 2006, 2008, when he's using the Saklit, the kind of like what oh gosh, I'm like the knife with a, as I'm surrounded by all these swords there. But his version of a Kermit. That would be the Montes Parao era. And that's really kind of, so after Tatang died and he started teaching more openly, the first era he did was very it's KI. It's his version of KI. By the time you got to the Montes Parao era, you're starting to get his he's starting to put more of his Balintawak into what he's doing. And the knife stuff is going to be very much from the Balintawak stuff. So, it's a lot of, like he likes to say, Barao Sugbo, or a Cebu knife is very much into it. And then the other place where you will see some knife would be the next era after that was Bunga Santaku, but that was more so Bunga, the flower, Santaku, the elbow, so the flowery elbow, and so that was more empty hand versus knife. And so if you see a lot of knife on knife and a lot of Abierta Serrada, that is the Montes Parao era, so that would be like 2006 to the end of 2008, 9, 10, something like that.
Okay.
And then after 10 to 12, I was going to say that's the Bunga Santaku era. And then we start getting into Ground Zero. And now we're in kind of silo, and it's kind of moving around a little bit.
So Ground Zero was, what was Ground Zero symbolic of?
Ground Zero is so the way he describes Ground Zero is for very, very, so like, again, our style, we have 2 ranges, long and short. There's no mid-range. This was his short range for long weapon, though.
Oh,
So
okay.
not just knife anymore. And this is where you'll get all, especially if you run the bladed hand time and you see Iggy's and GM's
Yeah.
demo longer.
Oh, it was
That's all
incredible.
Guro.
That was incredible. That
Yeah.
was I thought it was one of the best demos I've ever. I mean, yeah, that
Oh,
was
yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I've seen it a few times. And so how much KI? I guess I know KI is a big is an aspect of so like so did he give you a lot of KI or was it more just in the general sense of the overall system? You know what I mean? In there.
Well, it gets back into and so the controversy of it all is what do we define as KI, right?
Controversy in KI?
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Even most of the old timers, like and by old timers I mean people of GM's era, like Mangromi and whatnot. Everyone will say like Tatan's art was simpler than what is now being taught as KI.
Yeah, I've heard that. Okay, that's fair. I've heard
And
that.
in fairness, as how do you grow in art? How do you start appealing to other audiences? Curriculums, not beating people up and being like, figure out the lesson, right?
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. The pain distraction is not part of the syllabus, right?
well, having a syllabus it is
Or
very, not to say that Tatan didn't have a syllabus, but something a little more understandable and more Western oriented. And so, KI has evolved, and whether you want to admit it has evolved or not evolved, just look at the videos from the 80s versus the videos from the 90s versus stuff that's now, and a lot of those old timers, that's how you grow the art. That's how you grow the art from being a bunch of guys who are prize fighting and all I need to know is how I can win the fight versus like, hey, how do we have students? How do we
hey,
have
these
students?
Westerners are coming over, and they're paying money. And
Exactly. And especially if they're coming from other arts too.
I
And
mean, I understand it. I get it.
like Joni Kanete, when I met him in Cebu, he was very proud of how much they grew their art for their black belts. Like, hey, we added all this stuff here so that they don't have to leave; they can just stay and keep doing stuff.
Ah,
And so,
retention. That's a good point.
yeah, and so is that a good or a bad thing? Who's to
No,
say?
I think it's a valid question. Like,
Yeah,
who am I to
but
say it's bad?
yeah.
Or any of us, I guess. Yeah.
That being said, the art of what GM does, particularly in long range and even in close range,
Hmm.
is heavily influenced by KI, particularly in positioning, in relative positioning to hit and not hit. Though
Yeah.
there's so many variables in between hit and not hit, and as well as his approach to the psychology of fighting, of like, hey, if I hit you first, that gives me space to move.
Mm.
Whereas if I just try to move and not quick you, you might hit me. But if I hit you first, even if you do hit me, I got the better hit. I can move and I can flank and have that and create that space. Or a lot of that positioning and that the strategy of how would we would spar or fight between each other is very very, it's in his bones. Ki.
Mm.
The more flowery stuff, like a lot of the disarms, the throws, and all that, that is the Balintawak side, and that's more the art side. Uh, like what I usually tell my guys is that we fight with Ki, we do the art with Balintawak, kind of thing.
Okay. All right. I could see that. I mean, yeah. I mean, he was always quite honest with that in talks with him.
Oh gosh.
On the show that he would say there's the absolute fight aspect, and then there is the art aspect. So he was. I mean, he was transparent. You know.
Oh, he always is, and it's one of those things where if you ever get a wonky answer from GM, ask a follow up. And I do feel like some of the weirder controversies with him has come from people just repeating what he said without asking.
Oh, and maybe it got obviously just misconstrued, and
Like especially for some of the history, for what do you mean by this is that or this is this, and some days it'll be part of the problem. There's the language barrier of he's translating from Cebuano to Tagalog to English, if you're speaking English with him, he makes much more sense in Tagalog than he does in English. And I imagine he makes even more sense in Cebuano than he does in Tagalog. But even then, even in a more native language, he is a very creative person, and he looks at things in a very
incredibly creative. It's almost genius like. He's
oh no,
incredibly
he's crazy like a fox, right?
Oh, we got some more folks. We got Addy. Hey, and he's from Mindanao. All right, and we got Michael.
Oh, hey,
Mike,
Kuya.
Maestro Lalo. Hey, Brian. And here's a question that came in from Rich Parsons, a really good guy. And Rich's question is, hi, just came in. Can you recap the Balintawak part and where it comes from?
GM Yuli's as far as I know, it all comes from Jogo.
Jogo, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Jogo being one of the last
we had him on here. That was interesting.
Ansion Bakam.
And so more of the Anchong. Okay, all right.
Well, so Jogo, he did. So Jogo, before he met Anseong, he did Five Ancestor Fist or Gokosha, and so that was because Jogo was Chinese, and so he did his Five Ancestors Gokosha when he met Anseong. And so, and he was one of the last guys to train directly with Anseong at the time and make his own style. That's when he combined Balintawak with his Gogosha. And so a lot of the body mechanic that the Balintawak guys do, like the body stepping, the weaving in, weaving out, is very related to that, as well as the use of the elbow is related to the Chinese style from Jogo. But he definitely had his own take on Balintawak and the counter for counter. One of the things that I've always heard is distinctive about Jogo's art versus other interpretations of Balintawak is the lack of reset. It's not back. It's back. Why am I going to give up this position?
Interesting. So, and I'm not saying good, bad, or different. I'm just making a comparison here, folks, if you're watching. So I see a lot of the body that's like that, kind of the bob, that snap. Yeah. So you're saying this is a little different from that.
Yeah, it's different in the sense that, like, there's the mechanic. It's gonna feel very similar if you've trained with GM Bobby. You felt GM Bobby's energy. It's good. And you're gonna feel a very similar energy from GM Yuli and a Palaka Banate practitioner. But the way they're doing it is they're trying to really get that full body movement into it.
Gotcha.
Versus relying on a reset to create the movement. And so, like, forward weighted and I go to negative, I can get as much weight as much power as if I just reset and then try to go back.
Got it. No, I totally understand the difference. We do have, this is more just a comment. Oh, and he's saying GM Yuli studied Balintawak from Boy Ursal, and then Jogo for Goshka, and then and I got to read over here for the last word. Palaka Banati. Okay. Yes. Okay. Rich Parsons. Thank you. The throws most likely came from his Chinese side to give Master Jogo his own credit. Okay. And he's saying thank you. Yes, the lean is Balintawak. Okay. All right. Nice. That was nice. It was a nice breakdown. Thank you. Okay. So, all right. You're studying. You're getting immersed. I mean, Yuli is the guy. You're hooked, line, sinker, sold. You're going back there a couple of years. When do you, I guess, when do you start? Like, will you get the green light to start teaching? I guess.
We did not start. We took a year. So when we first went, and at that time, and he's a little mercenary and with the way he teaches, and I appreciate it now, and I appreciate it having come from a bigger system and the politics of it all. His thing way back in the day was like, hey, if you want to start showing people stuff, 20 sessions. which is about 60 hours of training. We did not do 20 sessions our first trip. And so, we took that year and we took what we learned and we just trained a lot. Just a number of hours every day, just a lot of live stick sparring, and whatnot. And then we came back, and the part in the bladed hand with us in it is when we got the official okay to start teaching, because that was our surprise Hassan Guro test at the time, where we got to spar all our brothers, including GM and his brother.
So that was circa 2011, 2012?
Yeah, I want to say 2012, maybe 13.
That's when it came out. I just had him recently on, so.
Yeah, so somewhere around there. So maybe a year before it came out. And then we just started teaching openly, and after that point, and just been trucking along ever since then.
Oh, that's awesome. So, all right. So when you started teaching, were you at that point kind of the official Midwest chapter, or did that come sometime after that?
Well, like all the whatever chapters, that is, I'm not a marketing guy. Mark was much more on that, and so anything to make it seem bigger. But at that point, no one was active. John, I don't think Johnny had even started his class up in Colorado at that time. I'm forgetting who was in Florida. There was a guy in Florida, and there was a couple of guys in New York and Jersey, but they didn't stick with it. And so it was like, hey, we're the only ones here, so why not say we're in the Midwest, kind of thing, and just keep going and keep doing. I'm my view on teaching and having a group is like, hey, it's the people you see, and so like we could be busy West 52nd Street and to East 51st Avenue, and that'd be fine for me, or BZ, Minnesota, or whatever it is. But it's just, it is what it is. So.
No, I think it's neat there. I mean, you guys in there, and so kind of around 2012, and you guys been active since. Obviously, COVID, like everybody else, kind of got hit, either shut down temporarily or, unfortunately, shut down permanently.
Yeah.
You guys obviously waved that. I mean, went through that and got through it.
Yeah, well, so about, oh gosh, so it was pre-COVID where it just ended up being me and Cutler, one of the other instructors here, who's trained with GM, and we have a nice small niche group, and we stayed together for better or for worse. We just claimed it was our bubble, and we kept training during the pandemic. But it's one of those ones. It felt okay enough to be like, hey, we're not a giant group. These 8 people keep doing it. But it felt weird it didn't feel quite proper to open it up to new people until after the pandemic. And then we just keep going. Like a lot of people, I have no idea what's a good way to advertise this art. So I have, I wish I could claim that there were good reasons that people have found us. Most of the people who are in our group were either they were walking by or maybe saw a website, but and stopped in by accident. But
but nothing to the point where obviously, like due to the effort of your guys, like this big marketing campaign or anything.
Yeah. No big. At least for me, I've never seen any benefit from any of the marketing campaigns. At least the online ones that are out there. Like I said, the way we've gotten the most students was when we were teaching out of a TKD studio, and they had a storefront, and just people walking by, kind of thing. But
yeah, well, sometimes that's it. I mean, if you got a decent storefront, people are seeing you.
Yeah.
Sometimes that could be the best thing, really. I mean, but it's nice to hear that you guys weathered out COVID. My group class just went to hell, and then when COVID got through, because due to Zoom, I'm like, man, I could just do privates.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm liking this way better. So I just never filmed the group class back. I'm like, I'm done, man. This, you know.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
for better
but
for worse, we have to do a group class because all my guys like sparring.
yeah,
And
no. I mean, obviously,
can't spar online via Zoom.
yeah, that's gonna be tough. But if I had a school, of course, I would have been more vested and would have to, of course, keep it going during that time. And so, of course, I didn't have any of that overhead. I was subletting, so it really didn't affect me. And some of the students I had in the group class just converted to private. So, I
Oh
mean,
no!
it worked out. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
if
um,
it works out, it works out, right?
yeah. I mean, the thought of like, because people ask me, "Hey, you could do another group class?" I'm like, not really sure.
It's so much stress to do big group classes, you know. Yeah, 'cause I feel like even when we had more people, and I think, like I said before, like the most people we've had is when we teach boxing. You know, because
Yeah,
weird stick arts, you know, who cares? But you know, a lot of people want to get fitness through boxing and whatnot. But you know the cost of most commercial spaces these days, at least around here,
crazy.
you know, like yeah, there's no way. I feel guilty trying to charge anyone the amount of money you need to charge them to pay the rent for the
It's
meal.
not
So
happening. I mean, if you don't have a kids program in conjunction with what you're doing with adults, you're going to be
no,
subletting, or you could be out of the garage. And
yeah,
there, I mean, you're not going to. I mean, there's very few schools that had this very successful FMA, because we had a show on there, and they all had kids though. There
yeah.
was, you know what I mean. So I think maybe one might be there might have been maybe one or two that didn't, but they were heavily kid driven. You know,
No,
it's
well,
tough.
the kids are, you got the kids for a lot, at least a good 10 years or however many years
Yeah,
afterwards. And you got that residual loyalty afterwards. And, you
that's it.
know, and I hate to say it, like for better or for worse, if you really want to be good at a physical thing, it's better to start as a kid if you feel
Yeah,
like you do it. So it's like, hey, more power to them if they can make it work and
it's
don't have
also just a lot. I mean, because now you open kids. Well, now you just open up, your classes and now your hours, and I mean, now you're in there, you're vested. But
to.
if that's what you want to do, and that's you want to be your livelihood, well, then I mean, unfortunately, that's what you're going to have to do. So it totally
Oh,
makes sense.
exactly. No, there's
Yeah,
no everything's in life is a compromise, and it's just one of
yeah,
those things.
yeah. It really
You know,
is. It's very true.
what relationship do you want with the art, and how do you want to, you know, do you want to keep it pure? Do you want to, you know, make money
Yeah,
off of it? What do you want to do, right?
it's a good point. And like we were saying, then if you got sparring, then well, and how intense are you gonna go? Because then you got, you know what I mean? If that's your livelihood,
Oh yeah, no, it's a. I will say that it's one of the biggest things that keeps our group small is that
yeah,
you know people might be happy to drill all day, but the minute it comes like and I didn't say like we do any kind of crazy sparring on a regular basis, but just you know, sparring is a lot of frustration early on, right?
yeah,
You know, and it's a lot of learning really basic things that you know, there are some people who are physically talented and you know they can get it right away, but those people are extremely few and far between. You know, and it's a lot of learning lessons the hard way. It's kind of like it's a better than boxing because at least we can do padded sticks and whatnot. Whereas in boxing, you learn the it's like taking a test and getting the lessons afterwards. It's just like
yeah. I mean, like unless you're gonna go to, yeah, exactly. I don't care how much headgear and that's,
no, you're getting popped and you're, you know, it's one of those things, you know, how do you know range until you get popped once or twice? And it's just one of those things. But thankfully, most of my guys are A, like new people, and B, are nice enough to help, you know.
the new people.
Yeah, you know, and for me, there's no point in beating up, you know, if you want to, you know, the whole purpose for me in having a group is having playmates that we can all play this game of
Yeah, not
Arnie's.
driving him out because the first time they came in, you like sent your best guy on him, and he was just going
You know,
down.
exactly, right? You know, and it's just one of those ones, you know, like we all get better together, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it really is. There's a saying. It's like God, I'm forgetting what it said, but like if you look at early videos of Tafang versus later videos of Tafang, you definitely improved from training with Tony and GM Yuli and all those folks. You know,
Yeah.
students help develop you, and they ask you questions that you never thought of, and do things that you're like, wait a minute, I didn't think you could do that. And,
No, I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, exactly. After spending all those time, there's nobody telling me they didn't have influence on his development and improve. You know what I mean? His refinement, I should say. Um, so what? So far as your group class, like, are you generally bringing them through the BZ curriculum, or?
yeah, so right now, I teach out of a community center in Minneapolis, and so we only have an hour per class, so we only do BZ at this point. A lot of people think they want to learn how to box, but it's just the amount of time and effort that it takes for this to not be a cruel a cruel thing is more than what a couple hours a week can do. And and as a teacher, I'm sure you've experienced all the people. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna practice outside of class, and then they never do. So it's like,
And then you
like,
see me next week, and you're like, I'm kind of seeing the same thing. I know. It's like,
well, that is the thing that I appreciate from GM Yuli is that again, it helped me when I've been competing. It's helped everybody. Is that there's no shortcut around putting the hours in and doing the rounds and doing and the work, and it pays off. But trying to tell people who are only showing up a couple times that like, hey, this will improve if you put in 10 hours outside of class or 20 hours outside of class.
no, it's gonna be hard. I mean, those are few and far between that you get like that. Most of it is socialization. They're getting out of the house. They're doing something, and then they go back to the rigmarole of whatever they got going on at home. You know what I mean? And outside, obviously, influences and stuff. So yeah, you're not gonna. That's a hard person to find. And generally speaking, they're gonna be young and single. I mean, let's just be honest, right? They're going to be young and single.
Most of my fighting days was, and when I did most of my fighting was when I was single. So
That's what I mean.
Identify with that one.
They're going to be young. Yeah, exactly. They're going to be, and they're not going to have dependents, and they're have a free schedule that they can be selfish because they don't. I mean.
Yeah, 100%. Every pro boxer I've known, what was the thing that got him to stop? It wasn't getting. Well, I knew a couple who got two punch drunk, but it wasn't the fighting it or even cutting weight was hard. But it was just missing the family from all the time you dedicate to it, and that's at the pro level. Even at the amateur level, you're doing almost as much training, and you're just
right.
Say goodbye to relationships as you're working out 3-4 hours a day.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, absolute, yeah, I mean, discipline and sacrifice, right?
Exactly.
So, all right, so we got a pretty good idea. So, I mean, you're continuing teaching, and when's the next time you're going back over there to see him?
I'm bringing 2 students over, and we're going to see them at the end of February.
Okay.
So coming up in about a month and a half, and I'm really excited because we're gonna. It's not going to be the same because after his wife's dying, but we're hoping to bring him back to Camotes at least for a little bit, and there's something about just trading on his island and just getting out of Manila. But that's my own bias. My parents were both from the province, even though my dad grew up in Manila, and I have a bias towards the province. Just if only for the food, kind of thing. So hoping to spend a good about a week with him, and just to enjoy some time and just see what we can do and what he feels like showing at the time. It's one of those things you can go in with a game plan of what you're gonna learn from GM, but you'll usually get something better. If not exactly what you intended, you'll get something better.
Well, one thing I wanted. Is Mansoul still up there with them, or Mansoul on that. Is Monsoon in Manila as well?
Yeah, well, they do a lot of back and forth between Manila uh and Camotes. Camotes is such a small island, particularly Pilar, where he's from.
Yeah.
If you're not retired, you're fishing, and you ain't making much money if you're fishing. You know,
Mm,
and so both him and his brother Namli are will do stuff in Manila, and they all try to get back to Camotes when they can. Well, everyone from the province. If you're from the province, Manila is where you have to make your money. You want to go back home at some point. That's
yeah.
that's where home is. That's where family is. Kind of like the joke is half the people on Camotes is going to be Romo or they're going to be Boranaga.
Oh
They're
my
all really good to
gosh. That I mean, how what's the distance
Uh, so from Manila or from?
from Manila to the province? Camote.
Okay, so there's two ways you can get to Camotes. But my personal bias and the way GM usually goes, Camotes is actually closer to Leyte than it is to Cebu.
Okay.
And so what you usually do is you fly down to Tacloban. The miles aren't going to make much of a difference because it's the Philippines, and so not so much on the airplane. So it's maybe like an hour ride on the airplane. But once you get to Tacloban, then you go to Ormoc, and so that will be a good 4 hours. You'll look on the map, you'll be like, "Oh, this is a half hour, 1 hour." It's going to be 4 hours because it's an island with
Wow.
single lane, roads and whatnot. So if there's a water buffalo in the highway, you're waiting for that water buffalo to move, kind of thing. And then
That,
from Ormoc, it's an hour ferry ride to Camotes.
oh, okay, so it's kind of like planes, trains, and automobiles.
Oh yeah, it's worth it though. One of the nice things about Camotes and Pilar, it's very pristine. It's not super touristy. So if you like diving and snorkeling, if you have a loved one who you're trying to convince, uh, convince them by the diving and the snorkeling, there's a lot of. I have a bias. I have a lot of biases towards the Philippines, in particular the water. I love Philippine water. I was just in Grenada in the Caribbean not too long ago, close but not quite. There's something
Yeah,
bad.
some of the beaches over there are just
Oh,
amazing.
exactly. And everyone is like Boracay, Palawan. Well, Palawan is Palawan, but it's one of those things. If you find the right place, you can be the only one on that beach, and you can, you know, if you go to Kawit in Pilar, you'll you'll probably be the one foreigner on that island at the time. Maybe there might be one other one, kind of thing. Uh, and it's nice to just experience the Philippines as the Philippines, and not to have that touristy.
Absolutely, yeah, agreed. Yeah, yeah. I mean, no, I can see, I can understand that.
And on the
Mm,
plus
so
side, if you like swords, when you're going from Tacloban to Ormoc, you pass through Cargara, and then you can get Zanzibar. So
I was in the bar heaven, huh?
yeah, they'll be all on the storefronts and whatnot, and you might see some victims of Zanzibar walking down the road with one arm or something, but
Yeah.
you know,
Hey, it
it's
does
definitely.
work. That's what they're saying. The swords are sharp.
Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I remember my cousin when she was like, "Why are you buying Zanzibars?" I was like, "Oh, because they're cool, and they take parts of the past." And she was like, "They're scary. Only scary people use them." I remember in high school, some thugs attacked my best friend, and we had to hide him in the house because he was all hacked up and blah blah blah. And I was just like, "Oh,
And
I'm glad I didn't have to deal with that."
yeah, yeah. So we're gonna jump into now the FMA talk. So you, Tim Hartman, John Benarski, back in the day, you guys were the host. When did that start? And I guess how did it start?
Well, it was like, oh geez, I'm gonna get the dates wrong. I should have looked it up.
That's okay, just a general idea.
But it was just I want to say like maybe 2012. We had done Lab and Laro a couple times
Mm.
when Tim was having it more regularly, and and part of Lab and Laro he'd always have us. Well, the better Slobber Rose where we'd have more people show up is the ones where you have the seminar first, because how many people won't show up if there's not a seminar, and I'm the weird one. I like the tournament first, and seminars or seminars. And it was like, hey, you know a bunch of guys, and uh, Mark, he actually went to college for radio broadcasting.
Okay.
And so he's like, I wouldn't mind redoing this. Why don't we do a bunch of interviews? And so Tim was like, hey, I can feed you the first few guests, and then try to find some on your own. And then, like I was talking about, I was a big fan of the Scream and Digest back in the day, trying to find FMA and whatnot. And so it was just a great excuse to be like, let's go through the list and see who's available. And we had a really good run. Especially with a lot of the old timers, and whatnot, and trying to get, and it's one of those ones. At least for me, I specifically wanted to feature folks back home because they just don't get the light of day. That
Matter of fact, you had Tony, didn't you? You had the Peachy and Tony Diego one, right?
Peachy and Tony. We had oh gosh, I'm forgetting his name. He was an L-shy guy, but yeah, we had a lot of folks who, unfortunately, that was their only interview, kind of thing. And
right there that they weren't covered previously. You know what I mean? Like Mong Ben, folks like that, but you guys, and statewide, you did a few. Like you had David Gould, you had. A few others. Like how many did you guys end up getting or having?
Oh gosh, I want to say it was in the 100. What? So you have dwarfed us by 4 times at least, but we were like at 120, 160, something like that.
I know, but you got some folks, man, that I can't even get now. I mean, it's not even.
No, it was weird. I think it was just podcasts were an odd enough thing where people, and there definitely weren't many FMA ones, and we just felt if we kept doing it every week, maybe we could get the ball rolling, and we did for a little while, and then like I was saying before, for whatever reason, people get shy and politics start rearing its head and all that stuff.
If you look at social media back then, and like if you guys did what you did now, I'm sure you guys would have got there. I think there's been a big transformation and growth in this, and it's more accepted now. So I think you guys would have done extremely well. Now, how'd you guys get David Gould on?
That was from
Mark Wiley, because of the
book. No, he. Gosh, I trying to recall because I was the one who did 90% of all the bookings, and so if I remember right, Mark contacted us about bringing some other people on, but I could have sworn it might have been after we had him on, but it might have been before. So yeah, he was instrumental. He had a bunch of books coming out from a bunch of different authors, and he wanted to feature them, and it was like, of course, why not, right?
Well, yeah,
and it was definitely anytime anyone wants to volunteer themselves to be a guest, it was always a godsend.
But it was funny. Like I remember listening to some of them, and you had 3 of you. You had John, you, Tim, and I mean, it was just like it's almost nostalgic in an aspect. When I listened to back, I thought it was great. I really did. I commend you guys. You guys were partially inspirational in what I'm doing now, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, give credit where it's due. Yeah, so I thought you guys were trendsetters, and going from the written word, so to speak, to these actual interviews. Anyone of them that like kind of like really stand out, or?
Oh gosh, anyone that really stands out.
Tony Diego, man, that's gonna be a tough one, man.
Well, Tony, we had so many issues with just line going out. Like the one that always kind of stands out to me was GM Vic Sanchez.
Who's that? Sanchez?
Yeah. And so he's another one of the guys who I'm glad we had him on, but it's one of those things. And he's not the most unknown guy that we had on, but it was nice to hear his perspective, and it was also interesting to hear how much the feedback loop from the West gets back home and influences how.
That's not, yeah, which is
Yeah,
true.
and one of the things, kind of like what you've done, but like the hard part for us is that some of the best stuff we did, discussions we had, weren't live because
I
it
can tell you
was.
some of these test runs when we like before I do them, like what's okay, we can cover this, we can, and then we start getting deeper. I learned some of those test runs, man, behind the scenes are freaking. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what the gold is.
it's when people let their minds loose, right?
You know.
But yeah, it was very fascinating. And just Renee, GM Renee has always been good.
Yeah.
What was fun was going to the Philippines that one year, where we went to Cebu, we went to met up with GM Renee and whatnot, and just you know seeing folks and meeting folks in their environments, and there's something different about FMA in the Philippines in their trading houses, like you know social media and whatnot can make groups seem big, make them look small and whatnot. And it can really hide like what is daily trading really like, and
Yeah.
how good people really are back home. And it's one of those ones where it's like there are some really talented folks, who pour their hearts out into the arts every day. But for better or for worse, especially back then before the smartphone, it's like, how is the world going to know about them unless
I'm
someone?
sure they were just legends that just never got known or didn't make it to Manila in the 90s when
Oh,
a lot of
exactly.
Westerners were coming, and they just never. Yeah, there's nobody telling me there were probably some phenomenal guys that passed away and just never got their due or recognition, which is obviously sad. You know, yeah. So you guys are going, you're jamming now, 100, and you're saying it kind of just fizzled out. I mean,
Yeah, it fizzled out. It got really hard to get guests.
dang,
I'd reach out to
I
folks,
can't
and
freaking. My list keeps growing and growing. I mean, like,
yeah. Well, we had a while where it kept growing, and then we had a while where it was just like, I'd reach out to people that I've hung out with in a tournament or whatever, and they'd be like, they'd be like trying to pin down water at a certain point. And so it just got harder, and then life got in the way. Mark ended up so part of the reason he's no longer doing BZ anymore is he opened up a photography studio and all that. So it's like it was good while it lasted.
yeah,
Are up.
no, I mean, right. I mean, not everything's gonna last forever. I mean, exactly. Like, believe it or not, some folks don't think it like, but I won't be doing, I will not be doing this forever. I mean, you got to keep going. No, I don't.
Well, hopefully you have someone you can hand it off to down the road. You can make something that
Yeah,
lives.
there's a couple ideas. Some people say just artifact it, put it into a library or your website or whatever. Which is kind of nice to know that I do have some options what I can do with it. Like, I mean, it's been surreal. Like, when I started this in late fall 2019, I had no idea that if you told me, oh, you will be doing close to 500 episodes, and I'd be like, really? I mean, like, I was watching, is anybody going to be listening to me? That was like my first.
Yeah, well, you did it right, and having regular episodes, and I think that's part of what really started putting a hiccup on us. We started having gaps, and when you have gaps, it takes that momentum
The
away.
momentum, you have a momentum drop. Yeah, I tell you, what really kicked off for me? I was just doing one a week, and then when COVID kicked in,
Yeah,
I mean, obviously everything's shutting down, and I'm just kind of, you know what? I'm kind of bored here. Why don't I do two a week? So it was hard. So I started doing two a week, and it was really hard to stop because you're getting that momentum and that traffic. and it's going. And it was hard to put like a break on it. And then finally, a couple incidents happened, but it was so much for the best. Where I actually removed myself for a month, just came back recently, and I'm like, you know what? Going back to once a week. Yeah, but I needed something to happen to me to do that. That's how much momentum was just
Oh
going,
wow.
you know?
Yeah.
You know?
No, it
So
was one of the positive aspects of COVID. It got a lot of people looking and willing to do explore, and the
I think
explosion
so.
podcast and the explosion of willingness to have an audience for.
I agree. I think the cross training was a byproduct of COVID. Zoom, that's not going away.
Yeah.
Folks think it is. It's not. Um, you know what I mean. And then yeah, and this, the now what was reluctant to cross train, I'm seeing much more in that dynamic. So yeah, I think a lot of positive. Unfortunately, an unfortunate situation, of course. So, but so what are okay? So what's Guru Federico's future goals? I mean, for ourselves, Midwest chapter, FMA talk coming back.
Oh my gosh. No, Tim and company have a good run on it right now. I'm just trying to enjoy life and take our little small group and have our barbecues on the weekend or we can
Nice. Yeah.
play with swords kind of thing. So we're purposely trying to stay small. Well, I'm purposely trying to stay small just because weirdly enough, it feels like the more I've backed away from trying to push this and just letting things go as they go, I won't say it's necessarily gotten bigger or gotten better, but it's gotten easier for me. And it's easy to turn this into a part-time job you never thought you'd have.
Mm. Or they
uh,
might not wanted.
but it's one of those things. If you have a day job you like, then that becomes a challenge. Especially if you have a day job you like, you have a relationship you like. Which finally at 45, I'm in a decent space with that. So just having a small group and hopefully doing what I can to encourage. To bring folks to CGM and encourage other folks to see them in person because
That's enough.
at the end of the day, the joy of the art, is the games we play in person and with each other, and oh gosh, I remember Elric had a question of like from last week of like, what did you get from GM? And to me, is that play and that joy of the art, and
Yes.
at least for me, as long as people are willing to try to hit me and let me try to hit them back, we'll keep going in one format or the other and eat afterwards. So,
That seems, yeah. No, I think that's fantastic. I'm totally with you. Like I in my own system now, Playtech, and it's small, and I love it. It's like I
yeah.
don't have to worry about like who's doing what in Canada or what they're doing over in Siberia. It's just like I know them. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like I know the folks. I have an aspect of quality control. It's very interpersonal because I know, and I really like that. Where like when I have somebody out there, but I really don't know the person. Like that doesn't work for me. It might work for somebody else who's really trying to build their brand and all that. But for me, I want that interpersonal connection and stuff. So I totally get where you're coming from, as far as wanting to keep it small and you get at the eating afterwards and so forth. So I think that's great. You
Yeah. No, it's one of those things too, just trying not to put too much expectation, because training partners are a gift and people are
Amen.
a gift for as long as our paths align and just trying to enjoy, things for what they are and whatnot. And if a few more people get to learn and get a passion for this, hey, job well done. And if not, we've had some fun along the way. So
No, man, no, I dig it. Oh, I think that's a great attitude. I mean, and so yeah, well, hey, this has been awesome. I appreciate you coming on and doing this.
well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Hope you enjoyed it. See, I told you it'd be easy, right? No, See? No politics, no drama.
Hey,
You're not gonna get messages. You know, like, what did you say that for? You know, you weren't allowed to say that.
I'm sure someone will complain about it. It's like, oh, the paint in the background was all wrong.
Oh my God! I can't believe you had the guitar between the barongs. What were you thinking? During the live episode? And we got your buddy Kurt. Kurt's going to be coming on in a couple weeks, actually.
Oh, nice.
We'll buy that very soon. Yeah. So we'll see what he's all about in Detroit there. Well, hey, if I don't talk to you, have a great trip over there in February, and please extend my, my hello to him and everything else. I'll be talking before then, but yeah, that's fantastic. You're going to see him. That's awesome. Yeah, man.
Time is short, and might as well, beyond the gift of training, it's a lot easier to get around the Philippines these days than it was like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So, if anything, it's a good vacation. So, especially if you're in a cold state like Minnesota or
you're going to the perfect time, man. Right dead of winter, man.
Exactly. That's always been part of what helps me look forward to these trips. Is like going right in the middle of winter, and it's shorter after you get back.
I mean, we get cold here in Connecticut. Like the worst we'll get. If there's a wind chill, we can hit single digits, 0. Once in a while, we'll get below the 0, and that's only if there's a wind chill. But I hear you guys, man, that's a whole different dimension.
Well, every other year, except for this year, where we barely have any snow on the ground, and I've been walking outside in flip-flops. But then again, But yeah, no, there's been years where like an entire month we don't get above 0. And it's just like, ugh, why did my
man? Like, you wake up, you open the door, and you're in pain. It's like, oh my God.
I hate to say it, that's the only reason I have a beard right now is like, I know it's patchy and it doesn't look good, but it keeps the face warm when it's cold.
Yeah, right. Man, wow. 0, like a whole month of 0 degrees.
Well, it's one of those things. Back in the Minneapolis music scene in the late '90s, a lot of people was like, maybe that's why there's good music coming out of Minneapolis, because no one has anything better to do than sing inside it.
Yeah, they're all sitting inside just writing. I mean, you're like, yeah, geez.
And it's the same thing for training and whatnot. People have to find something to do indoors aside from just watching TV. And I'm glad if it's traditional art like FMA and then or if they're in a gym or whatever, but whatever gets people moving and
absolutely. Yeah, we got to spread it, man. It's good. I mean, we got to get more and more folks into it, particularly the younger generation. Unfortunately and sadly, not that I want to be right, like some systems I think are going to go by the wayside. Sadly.
Oh gosh, yeah. No, it's something that's hitting all the martial arts, getting people, not just ours, but just getting people to train and getting people to just use their bodies more for the younger generations. And then FMA, for whatever reason, there's a weird age gap, because I remember the last La Bandolero I fought in, I was 34, so I wasn't quite in the 35 and plus age. And the 18 to 34 group, it was me and Ryan Monopolis, and that we were it. Whereas the 35 plus group and almost every guy in it was.
I know, that's what I mean. It's like, there's a ton of us around our age, but we're not seeing in the teens, 20s. Exactly. That's the deficit. You know what I mean? And
I don't know why there's the gap, but
I think it's through MMA, BJJ. They associate what they see on TV and that, and they just run the business orientation, and the marketing.
They've noticed a drop in the last 10 years in membership, and just fewer and fewer younger people want to do physical things, especially physical things that are painful, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, wow, Yeah, then we're doomed. If that's the case, man, then we're doomed because it's not like we're gonna hit a point in time where they're all gonna wake up and just flock to FMA. I mean,
Yeah,
so,
yeah, no, it's well, just anything and everything to get people physical, and I figure FMA has got its curve from when it got really popular to back to maybe it's just small groups and backyards, but as long as people keep
yeah,
the
I mean, if it if it does that, but still gets perpetuated some shape, way, or form, that's obviously better than the alternative, right? I mean,
exactly.
yeah, I don't know. Well, hey. But anyway, hey, you have a great trip out there, and you take
Oh,
care.
thank you. Yeah. And I will give GM your regards.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll talk to him before that. But in event by which I can't imagine is going to happen, yeah, please do, and have a great trip, and try to stay warm before you take care. All
Thank you. Inga.
right, folks, that wraps up 456. Who is next? Who's got trouble with this? Hold on, bear with me. A couple people. Kirk Cromwell's gonna be coming on, but I think there's gonna be somebody before that, and I think it's gonna be Molly Powell's book review with peers. I think I will know that. However, I will know that very soon. But anyway, it'll be pinned to have my discussion. You'll definitely see it. We definitely make that known. So yeah, but there'll definitely be somebody next week. I'm just not sure who, but definitely somebody. It'll either be the book review from iPal, or I'll in fact have to jump to Kurt. But one way or another, there'll be a show. All right, folks. Hey, if I don't talk to you, have a great weekend, and I will see you, hopefully all of you, next week. Take care.